Hey folks, Steve here with another Korea Fire and Ice video. In this video, we'll be trying to do turn 3. I may even try to combine additional turns. It's really just going to depend on how much I can fit into a video and how much I choose to do meticulously on camera. So I've shown enough of the basic mechanics of the game that I don't feel like I need to show each and every little thing that will occur in the game because it would really slow things down. The last video we did a monthly turn, which was the first time doing that. There was a lot of activities we hadn't done before, so I wanted to make sure that we walked through that in particular. But now, we've kind of gotten to the point where we may really just show the important stuff as we go. I did get one clarification between the recording of yesterday's or the other day's video, whatever day that was that I recorded that. The movement from through roads, through towns, on roads rather, is half a movement point. So I don't know if there was a miscommunication, Doug, on what was intended when your questions were being answered way back, but apparently it is right to move. If you're moving through a town hex using the roads, it is half a movement point. So I've been playing that correct, and I will continue to do so. So all good there. I would think the game would slow down a lot if each town, even along a road or rail line, cost one movement point, right? Because you would lose a lot of your movement capability just getting through towns, because there's enough towns on the board. You can see them. It's like there's a town every so many hexes, every few hexes, almost, that you wouldn't be making use of the roads like you think you would. I mean, the roads are super important. They're probably more important than we would even think. The one thing I do find myself trying to figure out is like, okay, well, right now where the game is very dynamic, in the front line is nebulous at best. Like, how do you even know what road hexes are controlled? Because if enemy controlled hexes block uh, lines of communication, how do you know you still have a path? So, for instance, like, I know that this road line has not been taken control of. This road line here has not been taken control of by the communists, so I can sort of make an assumption, say, okay, well, I can trace a line of communication that way. Same thing with down here. That's not really a problem. But out here in the middle space, it becomes a lot harder to figure out. Well, I guess, I came to here from over here, and I might have taken, like this path. So maybe, these towns are still technically controlled by South Korea, but, does that even matter? And I know that in some hex encounter games, like, for instance, GMT's the U.S. Civil War, like, you don't even track control for certain spaces unless they have a place of significance on them, like a town or whatever. But the game doesn't have control markers, so if I am marking anything with control, I'm going to be doing so with my own markers or for my own mnemonic, and I'm not sure how much of a big deal that is, but the rules do say that lines of communication are blocked by enemy units, their ZOCs, and enemy-controlled hexes. So um, just something to keep in mind, I guess, and I've got to kind of think through how that's going to work. So we are now also at the point of the game where we need to pay attention to the reinforcement schedule pretty much every turn. So while I had shown you guys the reinforcement charts before, I'll show again. We had the week 1 of July 1950 reinforcements, but we're going to have in week 2 reinforcements, but the only reinforcements that are going to come in are for the UN player. And you can see we're going to get more artillery support, more tank support, more bombardment support, and US replacements, which can only be used for US units. But we also do get US units. So we get 1, 2, 3, looks like 1, 2, 3, if I'm reading that right, 1, 2, 3 actual units, the 24th Infantry Cadre, and a UN Corps HQ, and they can go in any supply source box, which I guess I have to kind of think like, well, where are they going to go? I could try to put stuff into Incheon and really continue to try to delay um, the taking of Seoul, but because the communists are going to go first, I suspect what we're going to see happen is the communists taking Seoul, coming over here, knocking out that task force, and taking Incheon before the Allies can get out of uh, the supply box. So I don't think they're going to go there. And then the question is, do they try to go into this supply box to go to Pusan? I don't know that that's a good idea. We probably are just going to end up putting them in Pusan. Um, and maybe that's going to be a pretty. I guess you could see that as a very historical type of thing. I guess right. We're going to try to defend that perimeter or that area and try to work our way out of it once we have stabilized the front somewhere. So that seems to be the best thing to venture at. I will say that I have also printed out some player aid sheets that are on Board Game Geek. So this is a 4-page, so on both sides, player aid sheet that does kind of summarize the charts into a single place. Now the game comes with player aid charts and terrain charts and all that stuff. I do like the layout of these ones on Board Game Geek, mostly because I can see all of the support values all in one place very cleanly, as well as the support values for the defender. So I like that this makes it a really easy reference. And then the additional die roll modifier. So just having it all in one place in that view, I prefer over flipping through the rule book or any which way, and it just manages to get most of this information in one place in a very clean way. So I would throw out there that if this game ever gets reprinted, that they should look to these player aid sheets as the thing to include in the game. I think they're very well laid out. Whoever did it, I'm not sure if it was. I have to go look if it was a developer or just a guy playing the game, but he did a really good job. And I haven't seen any errors on it, so I think it's pretty rock solid for my purposes to use for the game. So that's what I'll be using to help facilitate some of this stuff as we go on. Okay, so I think that's enough preamble. I always do a long intro, but gosh, I need to give you guys context as to what's going on, right? That's why we do this series. We really talk through the game as it unwinds as we go. So, okay, if we look at turn 3, which is week 2 of July 1950, we still have clear weather. The victory points right now are at 0. This is from the communists not wanting to have their units hurt very much because we can only use 1 replacement point per combat. So we've suffered some retreats as the communists actually trying to take Seoul and different things. It hasn't gone as well as we would have liked. And so we've sacrificed some victory points thinking, well, okay then. And then we're at 0 victory points. The U.S. player maybe doesn't get to have foreign aid later, and I don't know. We gave it some victory points. That we'll see how well that works out. We still need to get victory points, but I'm not going to repeat the whole conversation from last time. All right, so weekly phases. Fleet redeployment phase. I don't think the U.S. is going to move the fleet. The fleet is still here in the Sea of Japan's station box. Amphibious invasion phase. I do not believe we have an amphibious invasion phase. We're not going to be doing any sea evacuation. We do have the reinforcements, so we can go ahead and take care of that stuff right away. Let me go ahead and fix that up, and I'll show you guys the aftermath. Okay, so with the reinforcements, we got 2 U.S. replacements. We increased our artillery and tank support, and the bombardment level got way, way, way higher. Quite a bit higher, actually. Quite good with 8. 8, because we added 4 to the existing 4. And then the units that were added to the actual units that were added here are down here in Pusan. As I said, we have 3 American combat units, their cadre, and the HQ, the UN HQ, which are the blue headquarter units. and I might have mentioned this several videos ago now, but the way that the cadre system works is that the U.S. Units have a much sort of, I guess, better or structured activation method where the UNHQ can activate as one of its 4 units a cadre, which is a unit, and the cadre can actually activate units that are part of it who share the same, who are part of the same sort of greater unit. And you can see this with the purple banner at the top of the units that shows them as one cohesive grouping. So, in theory, right, you could have this HQ activate this cadre, another cadre, and another cadre, and then each of those cadre can activate the rest of their group. So you could be potentially activating like 9 to 12 combat units with one HQ activation instead of just 4 units. So it's really useful, but these units have to stay close to that cadre. I think it's within like 6 movement points or something. So they're going to be moving as a cohesive little bundle of guys working together in that cadre format. So there we go. Our first Americans are in the supply box, and they will be a supply source box, and they will be coming into Pusan when we're next able to move. And I've also chosen, I think I just modified the lighting of my camera, which I did not mean to do. There we go. The US player, a UN player, is not going to spend a replacement point, UN replacement point, to rebuild one of these South Korean units yet. Knowing that we're likely going to have combats and the South Koreans are very low on replacement points, we want to at least have one combat where we can absorb a loss with a replacement point. So we will not spend it to rebuild one of these units yet. We'll leave them there. Okay, so the reinforcements are done, and the UN communication phase. All the UN units are currently still in a line of communication, so that's no problem. And then the UN refresh phase, which I'm pretty certain units are refreshed and good to go. But the HQs don't. So we've still got a problem where this South Korean HQ is flipped, and we may not have a good way to restore them this month. They might be out for the whole month, I think is how this is going to work, but I'll have to look at that. So, okay, I know there's a terrible glare on the map, and I apologize for that. I'll also do what I can to avoid that being an issue, which is why we have the camera situated where it usually is and not by the player rate sheets. But, okay, let's start looking at the communist activities. Okay, so here we are after the communist strategic move. Because you can't get too close to an enemy, I think I actually need to modify one of these moves. There we go. There we go. So, you know, you can kind of see we're kind of getting wrapped around the axle of Seoul a little bit, but we've got a nice little train of guys heading down south. In the actual, remaining parts of the front, you can see we now have a stretch of 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, across the southern part of the peninsula, with our HQs not far behind, now all moved up. So I think for the North Koreans right now, here's the thing. I think an automatic victory is within sight, and it mostly has to do with the roads and how quickly we can get down into Pusan. And I have probably made some grievous errors as the South Koreans in getting this set up, in not defending the right places. Because I believe with this unit right here, if I activate him, he's going to be able to get into Pusan. He's going to go with regular activation movement. Because of the roads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then because he's not entered any Zocs, I'm reasonably confident he can keep going for 3 more movement points. 1, 2, 3, and he will get into Pusan. Now, what would stop this from happening? Well, if we had reserve movement and an HQ to use, we could move the South Korean units, into positions where the roads are clogged up. Now, the main problem for that is that the one South Korean HQ is up here in Seoul. You can't do much. The other is spent in Daejeon. Now, I was probably very foolish in that when I displaced an HQ, I left them up here, and that was foolish. I was trying to figure out, like, well, how far do you send them back? You could send them back as far as you wanted. I could send them back to Pusan if I wanted to. And I probably should have, and I did not do that. So that's a huge error on my part as the UN player. So when you displace an HQ, it's spent even before that player gets their opportunity. So if you're in the middle of a month, right, and you don't have a monthly phase coming up where you can spend to restore your HQ, well, you can't make it refreshed because the action to refresh an HQ after an activation happens at the end of an activation. If the HQ can't activate, it can't refresh itself. So it is totally screwed up for the UN right now because they don't really have an HQ in range to do anything to save them. Now, I'll have to look at the rules, but the other thing is then, can we activate an HQ in the supply box over here for reserve movement? If we can, and that's really going to be the important thing, if we can, would that make a difference to stop the guys from taking Pusan? And I think it would, because the way the activation process is conducted is that you have reserve movement before bonus movement. So I don't actually think I could get that unit into Pusan. I'd be back over here before I could do it. But the pressure is on, certainly, for the UN forces. I still would need to take other ports to win. So I need to take Incheon. I need to take Kunsan. But those are at least, like, I could see getting that at some point this month, in this monthly phase of July 1950. So it's still, while I'm stuck in Seoul kind of getting slowed down, I mean, it's still feasible, that we could see the situation develop that, the North Koreans could achieve a victory. It'll probably be unlikely once the U.S. troops actually get foots on the ground, but it's kind of interesting to see it play out that way. What we don't want to do is have the North Korea, one lone unit get up here and basically get swamped by U.S. forces, right? We don't want that to happen, which could. So we could very easily lose a whole unit. So we can't just send a stray dude down there. We probably just need to be, it's that balance between, like, I'm being cautious enough that I'm not being too risky, and I'm making a steady advance, or I'm going for broke, trying to get down there. But if I can activate that HQ for reserve movement, and I think I might be able to, then the UN can save Pusan, and that'll be really, really important this turn. So the only other guy that's sort of stuck behind is this dude who's trying to figure out a way to get sort of spun around, heading down, this side of the peninsula to help those guys out later. But you can see, I mean, we do have a lot of forces. It's just getting them to where they need to be. Had we not been slowed down in Seoul in the first turn, we probably would be, down here, and it would be looking a lot more like the historical Pusan perimeter by the time we get to August. But yeah, I don't know. So there we have it for the strategic movement and a little bit of strategic discussion. We're going to get into the activation phase, and I'll have to figure out what do we want to do there for advancing the game. So I will take myself off camera. I'll start doing these activations, and I will show you guys where we have some important events coming into play. Okay, sort of changed the camera angle here. So we had activated this HQ over here in the corner, and we moved a unit adjacent to Taegu, though it took basically all the movement points to get over there. We also had this guy come down here, and he had enough movement to do a prepared attack. So that marker has been placed, and then we did move that sort of center one through here, getting to here. And so that's really the movement and declaring combat. And it's here in the activation phase where we would have the reserve movement. So while we have an attack prepared up here, we actually will not adjudicate that yet, right? We have to finish the rest of our actions. And here we would have our reserve movement. So the reserve movement is going to be situated where I believe I can do this. I believe this is how we can work it. Is that because technically the HQs and units down here in the supply box are in supply, they are able to do the reserve movement. So this is the first time we've really been able to do it. So the HQ and units have a line of communication. Yes, they do. They're not in an enemy zone of control at the moment, so that's not really a problem. And we can't declare combat, but we can support a combat. We may not participate in exploitation movement. We may not move too far north, blah, blah, blah. And when the reserve movement of all activated forces is complete, if the HQ did not move and has a line of communication, we can refresh the HQ. And that kind of works like if we were doing all the rest of the stuff. So, okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to activate this HQ. We're going to activate the cadre and the rest of these guys, right? So they're all going to flip from being activated. And they're going to move. So it's going to be 1 to move into the port from the supply box, and then 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they're entering a Zoc, so they can get into position here. Same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, we could do 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And do 1, 2, 3.5. Oh, we do. Let's see. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And maybe it's better we do this. We create a perimeter. I think that's the main thing we need to do, is ensure that we have a perimeter of some sort. And then what we'll just do is we'll have the cadre, which is a unit, and the HQ in Pusan. We won't refresh the HQ yet. We want to get them off the UN supply source and into the city itself. I guess I could keep the HQ in the supply source box, but I think it'll just be better we put them out here. So there we go. The U.S. via reserve movement is now on the continent and is able to do something to defend. And so now, because of the reserve movement, we would get to the bonus movement, and this guy could not move further to take Pusan. He now has found himself in yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that bonus movement is complete, and now we would be adjudicating a combat up here. Now, I think this might be a good time to do or introduce another mechanic which we've not covered before, which is Interdiction Air Missions. So Interdiction is one of the other mission types we had. We had allocated as the UN Player 1 plane to Interdiction. Basically, what interdiction allows you to do is to stop a line of communication from being made, and it can be used in a couple different ways. And I probably should have done it sooner in the game as the allies this last turn or so. My concern was that if we failed to stay on station, then we're done for the rest of the month. And as we're making fights around Pusan, it seems important to not blow all of our activities in one place, though we certainly have done that quite a bit so far. So we're going to do it for this combat here, and one of the ways that we can do interdiction is when a call for artillery support or tank support is performed, we can keep that support from being made available. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this fight end up being a bad idea for the North Koreans. That's the idea. So let's kind of examine the whole situation. Because it's hills, what we probably want to do is stop artillery from being used. Artillery is going to be better, I think, in this given spot. If I take a look, let's see. Art cost for rough is 2. Tanks is 2. Is that right? I'm sorry, this is mixed terrain, not rough. So it is 1-to-1 for arty. So artillery definitely preferred to be the one that we stop. So the communist player is going to look to get support. The support value is a B, which is not great. And so, yeah, we are going to try to stop the artillery support from getting through. There is no top cover, so there's no interception possible. And no modifiers are going to modify the die roll. And let's see. Okay, so we're going to roll a d6 for our interdicting CVG unit here. So we're going to grab our d6, blue d6, we're going to roll the die, and we rolled a 3, which is, let's see, what kind of plane is this? This is a F4U. F4U ground support mission. Interdiction is a 3, so that was successful. That was a successful roll. So what we'll have is that now the North Koreans will not get any artillery support for this combat. And now we're going to roll to stay on station for this guy. And we do succeed. So he's going to go back to the interdiction box, and we're going to use him again for sure. You can only attempt 1 interdiction per enemy action, so we can't now say we're going to interdict tank support, but there you go. So now they have to get tank support. So the North Korean tank support at 6 minus 2 is 4, and then rough terrain, or mixed terrain rather, they get 2. And let's see, with no artillery and no air, that's all they really get. So they just get a +2. The attack marker doesn't give them any other bonuses. So not much. Not much at all. Now, what the UN player could do is be allocating ground support to this combat, but they only have the 1 ground support plane left, and they do not want to, miss out basically on using it in other combats. And I think our ground support as the UN player will do better defending Seoul as those combats come up. So we're not going to do that, but we are going to use our naval bombardment. And I believe this is the first time that we've tried to do this. let me see. We are on the coast here, so there's this Sea of Japan Station Bombardment coastline, so that is true. We are within a hex of that line, which means we can use naval bombardment. Readiness rating of -2, so we have an 8, so that becomes a 6. And because it's mixed, that is actually a +6 bonus from naval bombardment over here, which is quite strong, quite strong. And we actually get a bonus for the mixed terrain itself of just a +1. So the UN actually has a +7 to their die roll thanks to the naval bombardment. The North Koreans, the communists, only have a +2 because they missed out on their artillery bonus, and that was really going to be where they were going to have most of their support. So that interdiction here was very powerful. They had to get the die roll, but they managed to get it. So that's pretty rough for certain. I would say. Yeah. Gosh. Okay. So. We're going to adjudicate the die roll here. We have D10s for both. D10 because of the chit used, and then a D10 on the defender because that is a fresh unit. And I suspect this might go very poorly for the communists now, thanks to that air support. Okay. Well, maybe it'll be good for the North Koreans after all. So the North Koreans have an 8 plus 2 is 10. And the the UN player got a 4 plus 7 is 11. So we actually have seen, this was kind of unlikely. The UN player did win, but they only won by 1 point. And I think the North Koreans will take one off replacements, and that will be that. So that combat is over, and we see basically nothing else interesting really occur for that activation. So that attack is over with. Putting the chip back in the cup. Okay, so now that we're done there, we might think, okay, should we try to refresh that guy? And I'm not so sure I want to. What I might want to do, because like there's no one else to activate down here, like the units are activated, so they're pretty much done. But yeah, I think we're gonna move him down. So 1, 2, 3. We'll just do that. We'll move him up without activating him. So we are within the Pusan perimeter for certain. And now we can look at additional activations, but we still have interdiction capability, so that will continue to be something like now I'm going to want to focus on, because now that we've stopped the loss of Pusan, basically, we've managed to stave that off. We have an opportunity still now to well, I don't know. Here's what's tricky about air is you have to decide when you're going to use it, and that potential of losing it over time because they can't stay on station. They have to go back to base and sort of refuel and reorganize. So, like, we used up a lot of our ground striking already for this month as the UN. So we don't have as much to throw around, but that interdiction can be very powerful in very important places. So we'll have to see. But I'm going to take care of the other activations. The only other HQs that really have things to do are going to be this guy and the one up here, and that is where we will likely try to see our supply usage. But here's the tricky thing. As you can see over here, the North Koreans only have 3 supply points left because they used so many trying to take Seoul. By the time we get to the end of the month, we're gonna be out of supply points, and we're not gonna be able to do a whole lot to reactivate HQs, and that could be a problem. So we don't have a huge amount of options to work with here. If I I mean, I can, yeah, I don't know. I might have overspent my supply, so I have to be very careful with how we how we proceed from here. Um, and well, all right. I think I'm gonna. Here's the thing. If I don't, sorry, I'm just blabbing. If I don't activate this HQ, reactivate or refresh this HQ now, I'm not going to be able to do it again until the monthly phase, I think. And I need to keep pushing towards Pusan. So I think we are going to try to refresh that particular HQ. I think we've got to try. Um, so if we're gonna spend it, let's see. I think what I need to figure out is, do we spend the supply even if it gets interdicted? And that I'm not sure about. Um, I guess you would, because the way I think the rules are ordered, you don't spend the supply point until you confirm that it has a line of communication. So, so I guess we're going to look to spend a supply point to refresh that guy, but we're going to try to interdict. And here's our die roll for that. And we failed. Okay, so we failed, so we will get to refresh this HQ. Or no, he moved, so he can anyway. Ugh, okay. All right. All right, guys, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm wasting your time. I don't mean to do that. Okay, let me just get back to activating units. The important thing, and we'll go from there. Just showing the aftermath of an attack on Seoul, which did succeed in pushing the unit out of Seoul and back across the river. It became a poor unit here for the U.S., and now we're sort of adjacent over here. And a big part of it was a deliberate attack on the city. We had supporting attackers, and it created a pretty good bonus. The Allies failed to interdict the artillery support for the communists, but stayed on station. And the ground support of the Allies helped to balance it a little bit, but ultimately that did not work. So the communists rolled a 2 on the die, the UN rolled a 1 on the die, and the communists had a +9. The UN had a plus, I think it's a +6, and so it just wasn't enough. So they took they took their replacement loss that we had for UN forces. We gave the communists 2 victory points, and we retreated 1 hex. And then in the advance after combat, you can see we're getting kind of a little better situated for what we need to do in the combats to come. So yeah, I mean, it looks like we'll probably get Incheon here soon, and then we'll carry on through. The ground support stayed on station as well, so the Allies still have a decent air complement to use. We're probably still going to avoid taking this last city hex because we're going to use it as an objective bank. I don't like that that's what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm incentivized to do that, so we'll see. And now is the important thing. We're like, well, I could try to activate some of these units up here with this HQ, but I would like to activate some of these guys over here with this HQ again. So I'm going to try to spend a supply point to activate them again, and we're going to try to interdict that. And we succeed in interdicting that with a die roll of 1. So we can't refresh that HQ. Wow, that's going to be pretty powerful at the moment. And then rolling to stay on station. And ooh, we actually failed with our die roll of 6. I have to look to see if there's anything that bad happens because of that, and I think it might. Okay, for an on station check, this 6 is not bad. So we're gonna take that carrier plane group that was an interdiction, and it's now placed back on the 7th Fleet Carriers box. But we kept that from being activated. So now we really do need the last communist HQ to do anything. Let's see how close we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So because of the road system, I believe we actually can activate these guys up here with our remaining HQ. So we're probably going to do that. So I'm going to try to take care of those actions, and then we'll probably spend a supply point to refresh this guy when we're done. But let's stand by and see what happens. Okay, here we are at the end, I think, of our communist activations for this week. We have one HQ that is not flipped, either because they didn't move and they weren't interdicted, and that's just this HQ here in the center. We did take one of the last, we did take this hex of Seoul. We still have a North Korean unit here, but I found it more important to focus an attack on eliminating the U.S. task force, which got blown apart pretty easily. Which is, I mean, not too historical, because the Task Force Smith they were victims of bad circumstances. But the North Koreans have advanced into Incheon, and so we have shut down another supply box. So that's 2 of 4 shut down. Needed a win, but as I said, Pusan now has a defensive perimeter that they can begin pushing out of. This poor guy's kind of out of line of communication. He's got some problems. That HQ is likewise kind of clogged up, and we're avoiding taking this hex if we can, because we want to put objective markers there, ultimately. And so we've got a couple units that didn't get activated this turn, and that's okay. I'm not so worried about that. But what I want to make sure I'm able to do is get things situated where we'll have a good next week with our units activated again, and we can at least start, getting down into the southwest part of the country, which has largely been ignored at this point, where not enough action has gone on. I didn't even activate this unit because I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to take Taejon himself, and we really needed to get past Seoul to make headway there, and I think we'll be able to do that this next turn without too much of a problem. So I think we're okay there. I think we're good. The UN forces still have a lot of problems when it comes to when it comes to movement and activities and everything else, and so we'll see just how far they can get. I will say, I did it off camera. I did refresh the UN HQ for 2 supply points at the end of that reserve movement over near Pusan, just so that the Allies still have something that they can do. But I think that's really it. So, communist activation phase is over. Communications, I'm pretty sure everyone is in quite good shape due to the way you count the hexes and everything else. And so I think we're good. So we're going to refresh our units. I believe this guy can count up around here for line of communication, or around here. Pretty certain, so it's not really an issue there for any of these guys. And of course down here. Okay, now we'll have the UN strategic phase, and well, we've got some problems. We still have a number of problems because only so many units are going to be able to do this, period. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what we can do. Yeah. Let me take care of that off camera, and we'll kind of see what actions are even feasible right now for the UN. They've managed to keep their ground support, their last ground support plane on station this entire time, so kudos to them for maintaining the action. I think it's interesting ultimately that, like, even the UN has a lot of air forces, but it's like, well, where are you going to use them? And if you use them all in a particular area and they can't stay on station, like if you do too much stuff in the first week of a month, then you're going to spend the rest of the month without a whole lot of support. So it's kind of weird how that ends up working out. But okay, let me go take care of that. Okay, so if you were watching closely, you'll notice the board is quite different after the UN activation. Might have been a good thing to show on camera, but I was just trying to figure out how it was all going to work out. With the strategic movement, we actually had a unit pull back. I think he was able to do that. I guess I need to double check to make sure. I was pretty certain that he could. Yeah, he would have been fine. So he pulled back from here to here. You can see, right, we're starting to get more of that perimeter reestablished. But the important thing was during the actual activation, I was able to, at least in my opinion, in terms of how you trace movement points for activation, I activated the North Korean unit over here via the UN HQ, and there was a combined combat here. I think it was here actually, but here against the one North Korean unit that had moved a little too far up, and it was a pretty nasty one because we had basically moved and put the unit out of communication, so it could not call, the communists could not call on tank or artillery support, and obviously didn't have any air support to throw in, while the Allies had a support bonus. They had their tank and artillery, though we were attacking a town. I think it was a town. It was right here. That, you know, provided some benefit for the support, but or was, you know, harder to get the support in there. But then we also had naval bombardment, which counted because we were 2 hexes away from the bombardment coast. So the Allies had a pretty great counterattack, and it basically did, like, it was a pretty wacky roll. I mean, it was like 9 loss factors, reduced down to 5, then reduced down to 1 because the unit was a guards unit, or reduced by 1 down to 4. And when I looked at it, it was like, well, we can't really retreat, and we can't take replacements, and we don't want to give up victory points because the only thing we can really do is eliminate the unit. So the North Koreans have actually lost their first unit on the board, in the game, due to this counterattack. And then in the advance after combat, we had sort of like this setup here. So the UN forces kind of have something resembling, maybe I should have left this guy like this, or yeah, maybe that's better. Situated in such a way now that they're set up okay, it seems like. I don't know how to, I'm not sure which way to look at it like that, but I think that's what they want to do. So you can see we do have a perimeter. It's smaller than the Pusan perimeter, but it's something around Pusan, and we still left one guy hanging out back here in the last supply port, just having something to hold on to, and I think that's as good as it's going to get for them. So that brings us to the reset phase. So do we want to voluntarily eliminate any units? The only one I could think of would be something going on up here. That just might be better. But he might be a nuisance while he's up there, so maybe we'll leave him alone. And then we have our victory check phase where we need to decide something. I think the North Koreans are going to plot a objective in Seoul because they can. So that's 2 objectives now sitting in Seoul. And the let's see, what does the UN want to do? they're going to remove this objective from Pusan, I think. Well, they probably have more time to do that, so let's remove the one from Masan. So that one's removed. That one was a 1 victory point objective marker. So what have we done so far in the victory check phases? Well, the communists have been placing objective markers in Seoul. The UN player has been removing objective markers from towns and cities they own and have a unit on. And that's it. Okay, and that's it. We're going to move on to the 3rd week of the month. This would be turn 4, and we will start it all over again. Put a pause here. Okay, I'm just sort of reorienting the camera before I wrap up this video. As you can tell, I mean, we're kind of in this weird state where it's like we've made progress. We are pushing into that perimeter zone. The North Koreans did take a shot to the jaw, which is a problem, but they will likely be able to resolve some of that stuff here very soon. I think it's gonna just come down to like, okay, now that we're now that we've gotten further along, when or how will the Allies push back? I'm still very uncertain with the victory point stuff, right? Like now we've got an objective marker we're sitting on in Incheon. We have one here. We have multiple objectives sitting there that will eventually reveal and take and all that stuff. And it still, excuse me, it still feels like a bit of a distraction. Like, why do I even care about these objective markers? Sorry, I'm getting like dry throat over here. So far, things are kind of panning out all right in terms of the gameplay and the combats and mechanically, how units are moving and where they're going and all of that seems to be working out okay. If I've done everything the correct way in terms of moving and coming out of the supply box, I think I've done that right, but maybe I haven't. I don't know. But I think where I'm maybe going to have some trip ups is, again, the objectives. I'm not quite getting, how much of a factor they should be. If I look at, the next, if I were to look at the Incheon scenario and where the Pusan perimeter is set up and how many victory points the communists have and everything else, it's unclear to me how I would have gotten to some of those places or spots. And I think I need to work my way through understanding the nuances of all of that stuff. But I mean, so far, I guess, so good. But yeah. So I think maybe we'll let this be a video and I will start looking at week 3 in the next video. I'm not sure what all the clips for this one all together look like. We may be getting close to an hour, but I don't want these to be too terribly long. If we're just doing the weekly turns, those can go by pretty quick. So maybe next video will be the weeks 3 and 4 of July 1950. And we'll see how it plays out. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts and input on the series in the comment section down below. It's an interesting exploratory experience. We'll see what happens. So thanks for watching, guys. Catch you later.